Hi there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I still bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data, but there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Randi Bryant, she, her, DEI Revolutionist, creator of Truthing Cards, and an admitted culture vulture. This week, our conversation is about paid leave that actually gets it, fertility wins on the court, rides without the tech headaches, and more. Welcome to the show, Randi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You tell folks a
Really,
little bit about yourself?
sure. My name is Randi. I go by Randi B online. I have been in the world of creating more inclusive spaces since I can remember. I right now have mainly I do a lot of work just online, having people communicate. It is my belief that conversation changes everything, and so if
Mm.
you get people to talk, it really heals. And so my tagline is it's time to have a conversation because I believe that it is always time to have a conversation.
I love that. I completely agree. It's definitely been part of my healing as well. And I would love to hear about the truthing cards. That definitely intrigued me and how they facilitate conversations.
Yes, I found in doing all the work working with people across the world that again, conversation is so incredibly important. And so I said, how do we get people to discuss things that matter to us? And when I say matter, I mean in the long run. There's so much coming at us from social media and television and movies, and that we're distracted all of the time, and we become focused more so on who's dating whom or who wore what. That we don't have these discussions about things that affect us day to day, that affect our relationships, that affect the society in which we live. So I created these cards. The first cards that came out, I focused because they were so broad on the Black community, and they were choosing cards because I felt that I grew up in a very diverse household, and we used to sit around and have conversations, and you had to earn your right to sit at the adult table,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There would be the kid table and the adult table, and you had to earn your right where you could hold a conversation and support your argument. And so I wanted us to get back to those times where we were discussing that. So I created 100 questions. There's a bunch of questions on here that were specifically for the African American community to discuss issues within our community,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel that communities grow and strengthen and thrive when those conversations happen. And so, as I've created a second set, and then this last set that came out is for everybody in the United States. I'm actually going to do a world vision where, we discuss questions where we kind of challenge you. Like, if you're walking on a bus and any sort of public transportation, and all the seats, there's someone sitting, so you have to sit next to someone. And
Mm.
I describe to people, by whom do you sit? Where do you feel the most safe? Right?
Mm.
Because that gets us to challenge who are we scared of? Where are our fears? Where are our biases? And that is the only way we grow, is if we challenge ourselves.
Mm.
I have questions like, if you are looking at a resume and somebody has worked with the company for 20 years, but you have another person, but they have a high school diploma, you have another person who has a doctorate degree, but no experience. Who are you immediately drawn to and think would be the best candidate? So
Mm-hmm.
there are these questions that say, oh, wow, I never knew I thought that way. You know,
Mm.
if your child brings home they're telling you they've gotten engaged, would you be disappointed if the person was same sex, a different religion, a different race? What would disappoint you the most? And so there's these questions that, are just, make us think. And
Mm-hmm.
we grow, and then we hear other people's opinions. And it is my absolute passion, really, to make those cards. But also now what I do is I have these truthing sessions, and I grow at everyone, at everyone. And the ones that surprise me the most are the ones with my own family. The generational differences are
Mm.
amazing. I'm so incredibly amazed by those, particularly my own children. I'm like, I raised you. What? Yeah, it brings us closer and helps us. It breeds understanding.
I love that because, I think one of the first steps, probably the first step to change is self-awareness. And we don't necessarily think about who we're going to sit next to on the bus. We sort of our unconscious bias just sort of kicks in, right? Let
Yes.
alone do we have a conversation about it. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family. My parents were from Ireland, and we definitely were not we didn't talk about feelings, right? And so I can't even imagine pulling out the truthing cards, even around Thanksgiving to this day. I can't imagine pulling out the truthing cards
I'm gonna tell you
because we
something.
still don't talk about our feelings. But I think it's so important to get to that point. And that's actually a great segue to what I wrote about in this week's 5 things, which is, the concept of walking on eggshells. I feel like I started working on eggshells, were sort of tiptoeing around conversations or being really conscious of what I said at a really young age because my dad had a temper, so
Mm,
being careful of what I said helped keep the peace in the house, right? Or at least I thought that it did. And I think for a lot of us from marginalized groups, walking on eggshells becomes that way to sort of stay small, to stay safe, to not draw too much attention to ourselves, to not cause potential conflict, to not risk rejection.
yes.
But I think for other people now, walking on eggshells is about fear of cancel culture. It's about fear of getting it wrong. So I've sort of seen both sides of it, and I'll tell you from my perspective now as an adult, even now in my 40s, with my partner's daughters, I find myself walking on eggshells because I'm afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing in front of them, right? And that I might set someone off. But I have witnessed that my silence sort of erodes those relationships as well. So it's really dangerous to kind of walk on eggshells if we're looking to have more authentic connections.
Well, and I tell people that's where the role of trust becomes, and that's when you're
Right.
building inclusive environments. Everyone should feel safe to speak and be who they are, with the understanding and trust that there's no harm intended. And if harm has been inflicted, that speak up. Then you speak up and say, that really hurt my feelings when you said this. Let me explain why. And the person comes back and says, I am so sorry. I'm trying to learn. And so the goal is to create these connections with people where no one feels as if they have to walk on eggshells. I tell people the stress of feeling as if I had to hide parts of who I am, has been with me my entire life. And when you're
Sure.
walking on eggshells, not to show yourself, not to be authentic in who you are, is it's stressful. And actually, studies have been done to prove what the stress that it causes. It's funny you talk about, like, I tell people when I first got pregnant, and I was working in corporate America, I hid that as long as I possibly could because I
Yeah.
thought it would make people aware of my womanness, as if it, I'm sure, as if they weren't aware before, right?
Right.
But you know, and I said, that is really, you know, and I was doing this work at that time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I said, you think about trying to hide something as much as being pregnant, which is very natural. um, and I was, at an age that was respectable and married and all the things, but still just
Yeah.
being pregnant. but having to hide myself is ridiculous. So that's the work we do, right? Trying to ensure that people don't feel as if they have to hide major parts of themselves, or or walk on eggshells to and be able to talk.
And obviously, when we do that, when we're either walking on eggshells around other people or we're staying small ourselves, it's impacting our productivity at work. It's impacting our ability to bring great ideas, to speak up if we see something that's a problem. It's impacting our ability to really contribute fully because we have that sort of sense of, oh, what happens if I get it wrong, or what happens if, and of course, all of that is a really big problem. It's a huge trust issue.
It's an incredible trust issue. And I tell people, I said, think about how differently you act when you're around people with whom you feel comfortable versus with people that you're not. We're different people. When we have a confidence where you could just kind of feel free to be yourself, you bring a fuller person, a better person. And that's what you want to create workplaces where people have the confidence to speak up and be themselves. And I don't think that people understand that. And then, it goes as far when we talk about how long people will stay in a company where they don't feel free. I mean, feeling smothered is not conducive to people working in your environment as their full selves.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get into this week's good vibes. The first
Okay.
story this week comes from Colorado in the U.S., which just became the first state to give parents of NICU babies double the paid family leave for a total of 24 weeks. So this is babies who are in neonatal intensive care. So, starting in 2026, parents can focus on their newborn's care without risking their jobs for paychecks, especially important for marginalized families who have fewer financial cushions and higher health disparities that can lead to these stays. Now, there are a few companies that offer similar benefits, but statewide protections are non existent. So, this is a really big deal.
I was bravo. I was so proud just to hear that, and and it is good news and good vibes to see that moves are still being made, and having to saying you want to create an inclusive environment really does mean thinking about who has been left out of your policies. What and whom did we fail to consider? And so I hope it even expands to anybody with special circumstances when you are, embarked on parenting. What are the special circumstances? So that is a great start, though.
Absolutely. All right, the second story this week comes from the Women's Tennis Association, which just delivered a major win. Now, players who are undergoing fertility treatments like egg or embryo freezing can now protect their rankings while they step away. So, under the new rule, players out for 10 plus consecutive weeks get a special entry ranking for up to 3 tournaments upon the return. So this allows women athletes to prioritize both their career and their family, which I know that you mentioned that you struggled with earlier in your career, which is a luxury that's often denied to women athletes.
Yes. Yes. And so incredibly important. I mean, anytime you come to protecting women, and I believe, when we talk about diversity, that's been one of the issues that we don't have a whole lot of lawmakers who can relate to the issues that, people, that women go through. And so it is really a boon when you see that someone, and I promise you that it was a woman who brought this to the attention. Yeah, this is and that's what I mean by conversation. A lot of times people aren't purposefully being neglectful, but they just have no idea, what problems exist.
That's
I tell
right.
people, I said, you can look at stadiums, right, and just know that they were built by men, because there's never enough bathrooms for women, because there's not this, there's not the clarity that we need more stalls, we take longer time to handle our business in restrooms. And so that's why diversity is so important, because you get different perspectives.
That's right. And when we are able to build facilities and create policies that are more inclusive, more people can participate and more money can be made, let's face it. So it's good for
Yeah.
everyone at the end of the day.
Yes.
All right, the third story this week comes from Uber, which is following a new launch by Lyft. So I think this is a good example of good vibes begetting good vibes. So Uber has new senior accounts, which give older adults easier access to ride hailing through bigger text, fewer buttons, and simplified navigation. So these older adults may face cognitive or physical declines that make driving unsafe, but they're not ready to surrender their independence. They're also able to book this through and use Medicare flex payment options as well. So it's pretty amazing, and really able to help these marginalized elders get where they need to go.
Such a it's a good move as far as but it's also a smart move. We are living longer and we are living differently. So it's not anymore people that are sitting at home all day watching soap operas as they age. I mean, people, I say we, I mean, I'm 54, we want to move and we want to go and we want to experience life. But yes, our faculties sometimes aren't working as well. And so to have that in place is incredibly smart and helpful.
And again, good for their business, right?
And that's the point. When, I try to make the point for people in DEI, DEI helps the bottom line. People say we're in a business, we're not in a charity. And I'm like, okay, this is a great business move to ensure because it's more customers. At the end of the day, you are
Exactly.
broadening your customer base when you are thinking about this diverse world and making it more inclusive for the people in it.
Exactly. Exactly. So more people are set up for success. All right, the fourth story this week comes from IKEA, where Jesper Broden, who's CEO of IKEA's parent company, has been handing out banana cards, which are literal permission slips for employees to take risks and make mistakes. So it's not just something that the CEO has been doing, but the program has been rolled out company wide from warehouse teams to store managers, sending a message that everyone's encouraged to experiment, knowing that their CEO will sign off on it if it doesn't go perfectly. And this is so important for traditionally marginalized employees who feel like they can't afford a mistake, right? Because it could put more spotlight on them or put their job more at risk. So this is huge.
It is tremendous. This is probably my favorite idea. I mean, just think about the innovation that company is going to see. I would dare guess and guarantee that they are going to grow by leaps and bounds because they've given people the safety. You want to feel safe at work to bring your best ideas. And most of the time, as you said, most people do not feel that way, particularly if you're from a marginalized group. So bravo. That is incredibly exciting. And really, when I thought about it, it gave me some ideas of how I would advise companies to ensure that they are creating an environment that people can be as innovative and creative as possible. But that feeling of safety, I mean, that's what it goes down to. That banana card is saying you are safe.
I mean, and this is something that impacts tens of thousands of employees.
Yes.
I mean, I just got shivers just
Yes. Yeah.
thinking of
And
that. Like
I
that's
love that they're thinking about it on all levels. Sometimes, you have programs that are just rolled out on executive levels or management levels, but where they're saying, if you're working in the warehouse and working a forklift, tell us if you have a grand idea of how it could be better. Tell us.
exactly. And they might come from a background and have a product idea that's going to help serve their community in a way that's not being served, right? So
Absolutely.
it's just again, it's good for everyone. And you can only imagine the ripple effect that also is going to have on employee retention.
Oh, yes. 100%. I mean, again, we go back, we used the word trust earlier, safety. If where do all of us want to be? We want to be in places where we feel safe. I said, when we're out going to like a restaurant, for instance, or a bar, people go to the same restaurant and bar oftentimes, not because it's necessarily the very best food that they have, but a place where they feel comfortable, a place where perhaps they know the server's name or the bartender's name or something about that environment makes them feel safe, and that's where we go. And that's the kind of environment you want to create at work, so people want to go
Yes.
and feel safe.
Yes, exactly. I love it. All right. Well, the last story this week is a little bit of good news, bad news. I have to be honest. So let's just go there. So the good news is that for the very first time, the first three transgender graduates of the U.S. Air Force Academy earned their diplomas. So that is just amazing news for representation and for their visibility, their sense of dignity, and now they have been denied military commissions because of the Trump administration's reinstated bans on transgender service members. So this is currently being challenged in court. These graduates have met all physical, academic, and leadership standards, but they have been placed on administrative leave and they might now owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition and be banned from serving. So I hate to end on this note. We'll have to get to the good vibes to go to cheer us back up. But geez, it's good news, bad news. It's what a time to be in.
Well, it really goes to what I've been saying or giving advice I've been giving to people as we've been going through this time that's very much challenging diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is keep on keeping on. You know, regardless of what is said, regardless of, what the administration is doing right now, I advise people to keep pushing, keep, going after those degrees or certificates or jobs or whatever it is, and just keep pushing, because so you're ready, because this is not going to stay this way. You cannot, the term I always use is people are going to people, right? You cannot stop, no matter how many laws you create, you cannot stop people from falling in love with whom they want to fall in love, being ultimately who they want to be and who they are and who they were born to be. And so I advise people that you can't out people, especially all the people in the world. So move pushing on. So yes, it is. It's not good news, but it's not permanent. I strongly believe, I do have the good vibes that this is temporary, that things will change. And I just really encourage people to keep on keeping on and believe in who we are, who they are, and who this world ultimately must be. Because at the end of the day, you cannot outlaw peopling. You cannot outlaw who we are, as much as people may try.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's at the end of the day a pretty small minority of folks who are, enforcing this. There are a lot of these graduates have a lot of support even amongst other Air Force Academy staff members. I mean, this is something that is going to be the exception, and it's going to stop soon, I'm sure. But they have a lot of support, and I hope that they feel the
Yes.
love because
I hope they feel the
everyone
love.
needs it right now.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, let's move into this week's Good Vibes to Go. I'll share my Good Vibe to Go, and then I'll invite you to share your Good Vibe to Go. All right, my Good Vibe to Go is that this week is Juneteenth, so I am sharing a very educational podcast from NPR, Democracy, a Juneteenth Celebration, and I will put that in the show notes for you to check out. Randy, what is your Good Vibe to Go?
I have so many. Yes. My good vibe to go is that I would really encourage people to look at the book Black as F History on
Okay.
this week of Juneteenth. I think it's a very good time to educate yourself about Black history, because it right
Mm,
now has been uh, s- really killed in high school curriculum and college curriculums, and it's never really been presented fairly. So people oftentimes ask, what can I do for Juneteenth? And I want to participate, but I kind of feel uncomfortable participating because I'm not Black, right? And I'm like,
right.
if you read this book, it is so wonderfully I just had it next, it's so wonderfully written, beautifully written, so fun. It has musical notes. It's just it's a thick book. It's an easy read by
Love it.
Michael Harris. And so I just think if you read it, you'd have some good vibes and feel really, really great about your knowledge about people. Black people.
Awesome. We'll make sure that gets in the show notes. Thank you. So, Randi, how can folks get in touch with you?
I'm everywhere it seems these days. I go by Randi B, and that's with an I, RANDIB. I have a great community on Facebook where the conversations are far bigger than I am. Like I said, I believe in conversations. I'm on Instagram, Randi B, TikTok, Randi B, LinkedIn, Randi Bryant, Bryant. I have a show that is on Amazon Prime called Truthing because I do the truthing. You have my truthing cards. I have a book called
Awesome.
Truthing. Everything's truthing too. Like I
Love
really just
it.
believe in living who you are, living your truth, and walking in your truth.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you. You have been such a fun guest today. I really appreciate your being here. Folks, if you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Have a great week.